Hello everyone. In this video, we are going to look into the first unit in your O-level science book, Applications of Microorganisms. In this video, we are going to cover this part of this unit. You will study different categories of microorganisms and their characteristics. Microorganisms. Let's look into the definition of microorganisms. These are unicellular or multicellular organisms that cannot be seen through the naked eye. Unicellular or multicellular. If you want, you can take notes together with me. I highly encourage that you take notes. These notes will also can serve as short notes. Unicellular or multicellular organisms that cannot be seen clearly with the naked eye. For some students, this definition can be a little bit confusing because of this part cannot be seen clearly with the naked eye part. Now, if you can recall grade 8 science, you have learned a little bit about microorganisms. And pretty much everyone is familiar with things like bacteria as microorganisms, and also you are familiar with fungi or fungi. Now, of course, we have different types of bacteria. Some might have these flagella kind of things attached. Some kind be just spherical or just this kind of shaped. And of course, we cannot see bacteria with our naked eye. If we are to place our eye, consider this is our eye, and we just cannot see these guys with our naked eye. However, for some of you, the problem arises with the mushrooms. I know that pretty much everyone have seen some sort of a mushroom growing outside or maybe inside your house. Can you see mushrooms with your naked eye? Yes, you can see mushrooms with your naked eye. So how can fungi fall into the category of microorganisms, and why we say that we cannot see it with our naked eye when we actually can see the mushroom with our naked eye? Now, when it comes to things like mushrooms, it is not a single organism. It's like a lot of fungi cells coming together and make this structure. So that big structure is visible to us, but if you take the individual fungi organism, we cannot see the individual organism. So in your textbook, this is the definition given to you in your textbook, but in order to better understand this concept about microorganisms, we'll make a small change here, which is actually not printed in the current textbook that I'm looking at right now. I'm going to say that the individual organism. So at the end, Microorganisms are unicellular or multicellular organisms that the individual organism cannot be clearly seen with the naked eye. So this is the difference between the microorganisms versus the macroorganisms. In microorganisms, the individual organism cannot be seen with naked eye. In macroorganisms, you can see the individual organism with the naked eye. For example, take a human. You can see the individual organism. Take an ant. Even the tiniest ant, if you can find the tiniest ant that you can at your home, you still can see it with your naked eye. So that makes that ant a macroorganism. Let's look at some general facts about microorganisms. Microorganisms can live outside in the environment and also within other creatures' bodies. Microorganisms can live inside in the environment and also inside the bodies. We have a lot of microorganisms living inside our body, and it's not just us, the cats and dogs you have in your home, even certain insects, fish, and even meat you eat. That is why when you eat animal product like fish, meat, they need to be cooked thoroughly to kill those microorganisms, otherwise we are going to get sick. They can be favorable or harmful. Favorable mean they can be helpful. For example, the bacteria, the microorganisms in our body, in our digestive system. The microorganisms in our digestive system, they help us to digest food. But then think about some bacteria that spoil food. So if you eat bacteria that comes in with spoiled food, you will get food poisoning. Some microorganisms can cause us infections. We can have fungi infections, bacterial infections, viral infections. So they can be harmful or favorable. Sometimes the very microorganism that works favorable can become harmful based on where they are. For example, think about the bacteria in your gut. Let's take, for example, bacteria in gut. Or the intestine. They can help to digest food. But just imagine if this bacteria goes into the lungs, if it goes into lungs, it can be very harmful. So it is important that bacteria, especially when it comes to our body, they should be staying where they are. If they move to a different location in our body, we are going to be sick. Another general fact about microorganisms is that they grow very fast. And this is why food can spoil if they stay out maybe few hours. As an example, food spoil fast when kept outside too long. Even when it comes for diseases, the condition can turn bad very quickly. So if you have a bacterial infection, a viral infection, you need to seek medical attention very fast because they grow very fast, things can turn bad very quickly. Another general fact is that they can adapt. They can adapt for different environmental conditions and also different modes of nutrients. Different modes of nutrients. I write different modes of nutrition. What this means is that as for environment, they can live in either very hot environment, very cold, very moist, very dry, those kind of environments. So for example, this is like hot, it's cold, or it is dry or moist, or just say wet. And when it comes for different modes of nutrients, it can be like animal parts or plants, and sometimes even petroleum. And because of this, they can be found anywhere and everywhere. And these microorganisms can be unicellular or multicellular. Like it can be just one cell or a whole bunch of cells come together and function as a structure. Microorganisms can be categorized into several groups. One such group is bacteria. A very important fact that you need to remember about bacteria is that all bacteria are unicellular. There are no multicellular bacteria. They are all unicellular. This is a very important piece of information you need to remember. In your level exam, if there is a question asking you to identify which category this microorganism belongs and it gives you a set of hints, this is a very important hint. If it is unicellular, you can immediately think that it is a bacteria. But also you have to look into other information as well. Bacteria is not going to be multicellular. Bacterial cells can have various shapes. Let's say different shapes. There can be spherical, there's rod shape, there might be bacteria with flagella like that. You can find them pretty much everywhere on Earth. These bacteria can survive in very harsh conditions, and they can uh, feed on very different type of nutrients. So they can be found anywhere and everywhere on Earth. Some examples of bacteria. Lactobacillus bulgaricus. Now, this is a useful bacteria. We use it in milk products like yogurt or making curd. Another example I can list is Bacillus anthracis. This gives the anthrax disease. So these things I have listed, they are already in your textbook, table 1.1. There are more examples, so please go there and add the additional information into your notes. Another group of microorganisms that I can list is fungi. These can be unicellular or multicellular. Now, when it comes for fungi, the individual organism is not visible with the naked eye, but the structures they make can be visible to naked eye. So add to your note that the individual organism is not visible to naked eye. Structures they make can be visible. For example, mushrooms. Fungi usually grows in moist surfaces. Remember, bacteria can grow everywhere on Earth, but the fungi, they usually grow on moist surfaces. Now, when it comes for fungi such as yeast cells, they are unicellular fungi examples. Yeast is Saccharomyces. Yeast is also known as Saccharomyces. An example of a multicellular fungi is the fungi that grow on bread. You must have seen bread mold. On bread, you have seen some blackish, bluish stuff growing sometimes. This fungi is called mucor. Now let's look at another group. Now I'm going to run out of space, so I'm going to erase some of these things. Next group is protozoa. Just like bacteria, protozoa is also unicellular. Now, protozoans, they use various structures for locomotion. Use structures. What that means is that to move around, they use various structures. What are these structures? We call them as cilia. Flagella is another type of structure. Now, cilia is something like a hair-like structure. Let's say this is our protozoa, and they might have little hair like that. This is what we call as cilia. And then flagella. Let's say this is our protozoa cell, and the flagella is a tail-like structure. And the other type of structure is pseudopodia. Pseudo means false. Or fake. Podia, this part means feet. So basically, pseudopodia means false feet or fake feet. So these protozoan cells, if we have the cell like this, sometimes they can, in order to move, they can grow a little, extend a little arm like this to walk around. Or they can have few of these extensions so that they can move around. So these are the pseudopodia structures. Now compare this with bacteria. Bacteria can also have flagella-like structures to move around. So in bacteria also they can have flagella. But bacteria will never form these kind of fake feet or pseudopodia. So pseudopodia is characteristic for protozoans. Pseudopodia and cilia are going to be characteristic for protozoans. So if you want, you can put a mark here, a note here, saying that this is only present in protozoa. Only in protozoa. In protozoa, these cilia structures, they are also only in protozoa. So you might wonder that earlier I might have drawn these kind of pieces of hair-like things around bacteria. So when it comes to a bacteria, we really do not use this name. We don't call these hair strand in bacteria as cilia. We have a different name, but that is beyond scope of O level under the current syllabus, so you don't need to do it. You don't need to know that name. But it is good to know that the structures like pseudophilia, they are seen only in protozoa. Right, because I'm running out of space, I'm going to erase some of these things I have written over here. I forgot to mention some of the examples of this category. Amoeba, Paramecium, Euglena, Plasmodium. All these names that I have written here, they are already in your book. So if it is in your book, you have to know it. The next group of microorganism is algae. Algae can be unicellular or multicellular, just like fungi. Algae has a huge diversity. For a unicellular algae example, I can take Chlamydomonas. This is a unicellular algae. It has flagella. This is unicellular. Another example is Spirogyra. This is a filamentous algae. Filamentous means it's like a fiber. It's like this. And its material is inside. I'm going to get a little bit more space here by erasing some of the stuff. Now when we say filamentous, this is actually a body type. When we describe people, we would say a person is tall or small, thin or fat. Just like that, this is a term, filamentous is a term used to describe the body type of certain algae. Another body type is thallus body type. Now the filamentous body types are like fibers. Thallus body types, they are more like flat structures. They are flat and irregular shapes. There is another very special type of algae. Those are called diatoms. Diatoms come in various shapes and they have various patterns. Now the algae like these ones, they are much more softer structures, but when it comes for diatoms, they have silica cell walls. So diatoms are much more harder than these other algae types. It's like they have a very strong cement wall. It's not cement, but you get the idea. It's like it's made out of cement, while these ones are just fleshy. So these ones are very hard, and you can actually extract them to make certain products. Sometimes in toothpaste, facial scrubs, things like that. Now in your book, there is another special example given, ulva. This is sometimes called as sea lettuce. or seaweed. This is an algae, but it does not fall under the category of microorganism, because when it comes for this specific algae, you can see it with your naked eye. You can see with naked eye. So if you can see it with naked eye, is it a microorganism? No, this is not a microorganism. This is a macroorganism. This is a macroalgae. The very last part that comes in this is viruses. Viruses are a type of microorganisms that do not show a cellular structure, and also they show both living and non-living features. Viruses can come in different shapes. For example, you might have seen this kind of a shape that look like a weird creature. However, this is not a cell structure. This is not a cell, just a structure. Now you can compare viruses with all other microorganism categories. All other categories, they have a cellular structure. It can be either unicellular or multicellular. But for viruses, there is no cellular structure, but they can come in different shapes. The problem with viruses is that they cannot come to life without a host. Now, other microorganism categories like bacteria, fungi, protozoa, or algae, they are alive. They are alive without living inside someone else. Bacteria, fungi, protozoa, algae, they can grow, they can multiply by their own without using a host. But when it comes for viruses, they cannot grow, multiply on their own. So all these can show living characters like respiration, growth, not viruses. So I'm going to list those characteristics here. Multiply only inside a host. So it is important that you know they show this multiplying character only when it is inside a host, and reproduce only inside a host. Even their reproduction, we don't call it as a reproduction, it's more like a replication. For these categories, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, algae, we can call them as reproducing, but when it comes for viruses, it is more like replicating rather than reproducing. So I'm going to list here that they replicate inside a host. I want to make a small clarification here. When we say show living and non-living characteristic, living characteristics. What are the living characteristics? This is basically growth and respiration. For example, growth plus respiration. I'll put it in a different color. When it comes to observing these microorganisms, all these microorganism categories, bacteria, fungi, protozoa, and algae, all of them can be viewed by a regular light microscope. However, when it comes for viruses, viruses cannot be viewed through light microscope. You need an electron microscope. Some examples for viruses are like influenza virus, HIV, Ebola, dengue virus. Now, these viruses, you can find them outside. Let's say influenza virus. This virus particle, now remember when we talk about viruses, we mention them as particles because they do not have cellular structure. There are no cells. For these things like bacteria, fungi, protozoa, algae, we hardly call them as particles. But for viruses, we call them as virus particles. So when these virus particles are on a surface, let's say the table, there might be influenza virus particles on the table, but when they're sitting on the table, they are not alive. Let's say someone sneezed and sprayed their virus on the table. Now it's sitting on the table, it's not live. But as soon as it get inside your body, this become live. So that is what we mentioned here, that it shows living and non-living characteristic and multiply only inside a host. They cannot come into life until they get inside a host. Now, this host doesn't have to be always a human. Now, let's say influenza viruses that goes from person to person, like human to human. The human is the host. There are certain viruses, certain influenza viruses that is only in cats. Some of those influenza viruses go only from cat to cat. It doesn't come from cat to human. So in that case, their host is a cat. And also there are certain viruses that infect plants. So in that case, the host is a plant. Have you seen a virus infected plants? Anyone seen papaya trees? Their leaves all turned like crinkled or curly, and there are various colors appearing on their leaves. Those are virus infected plants. So the host can be plants or animals. To keep you interested on the subject matter, I'm going to show you these images. These are an example of bacteria. These are different shapes of bacteria. And these are like real world examples, how you see them. These are examples of fungi. This is more like a microscopic view, and macroscopic mushrooms. You have seen what mushrooms are, and this is what yeast will look like when you study them under a microscope. This is how protozoa looks like under a light microscope. These are some examples of algae. And this is what diatoms look like. And the virus particles, they also comes in various shapes. However, when you are preparing yourself for the exam, you have to get yourself familiar with the picture formats that is presented in your textbook. Now these pictures I'm showing you here can be very colorful and interesting, but you have to get familiar with what you have in your textbook because that is what you're going to get for your exam. Now these are the images from your book and these are what you should be familiar with. Let's say you see this picture, you should be able to recognize this as a virus particle or something like this as a protozoan. Now this concludes the first part of this unit.